of the land in health care. And we can all go look at the votes going back the last 10 years. It's been partisan votes all the way through for Obamacare. They called it, as the speaker said, they named it the Affordable Care Act. It's been anything but. Costs for families are up over 80% in their premiums because of Obamacare. And what have they tried to do over and over again? They've tried to mask the cost. They haven't tried to work with Republicans to fix it.
That came out just about an hour or so ago. Now, the polls still have him ahead, but his rivals have been gaining some ground. Of course, Mamdani's core group of supporters are young New Yorkers. He really turned out those young New Yorkers in the primary and new voters to his campaign. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens next in the next 24 hours. Here is Zoran Mamdani a few hours ago.
Every voter will consider something different. But ultimately, the question before us is very simple. Morning versus night. Do we want it to be morning again in New York? Yeah. Where we feel the warmth of the sun on our skin and the possibility inherent and innate to every new day? Or do we want to shiver in the night cast by a politics of fear and self-enrichment? Our time has come, New York. Our time is now.
All right, now we're going to take a look at the candidate who is a Democrat, but running on the independent ticket, former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo on the campaign trail today. He went to all 5 boroughs. He is really trying to close the gap between him and Mamdani, trying to encourage voters to get out. There has been an amazing record-breaking turnout in early voting, and Cuomo is hoping that favors him. And he's also hoping that tomorrow there will be an historic turnout of New Yorkers. And he got I would call it a backhanded endorsement from President Trump last night, and then again on Truth Social. We're going to read that for you right now. This is what President Trump had to say. He said, a vote for Curtis Sliwa. We must remember this. A vote for Curtis Sliwa, who looks much better without the beret, that's up for debate, is a vote for Mamdani. Whether you personally like Andrew Cuomo or not, you really have no choice. You must vote for him and hope he does a fantastic job. He's capable of it. Mamdani is not. Cuomo asked about that on the campaign trail today. Here's what he had to say.
He said, I'd rather have a bad Democrat than a communist. That's what he said. He called me a bad Democrat. First of all, I happen to be a good Democrat and a proud Democrat, and I'm going to stay a proud Democrat. Mamdani is not a communist, he's a socialist. But we don't need a socialist mayor either.
All right, Republican Curtis Sliwa also campaigning hard today, starting every campaign at a subway station. He did that today. He is still out there right now as we speak, campaigning at multiple places around the city. You see him putting a wreath down at the subway station where a transit rider was burned to death, and he's laying flowers down there. Part of his campaign, he drilled over and over again, was how he would be the candidate to reduce crime in New York City. Of course, as the founder of the Guardian Angels, that's what he has done his entire career. He has a large base of support in Staten Island, but he remains a distant third. Here's what Sliwa had to say this evening.
I believe in people power. It's the people who will determine, not the billionaires, not the influencers, not the insiders. I trust people. I don't trust politicians. I don't trust billionaires. And I don't trust the insiders. So that's my final words. And I end my campaign as I began my campaign and spend every day of my campaign with the people of New York City on the subway.
All right, so there you have it. You see them. They're out there right now as we speak, and we just heard from our assignment desk that Cuomo has another availability coming up in just a few minutes. So the candidates are really working hard right up to the last minute to try to make their case to voters. To get some more insight on this, I have lots of live guests throughout the hour. We're an hour tonight, so I hope you guys stay with us. I'm going to bring in Trip Yang. He's a Democratic strategist. He knows all things politics, and he's a friend to Fox 5, as we like to say. Trip, come on in.
Thank you so much,
Are you
Sharon.
excited? Are you excited?
I am so excited to talk politics with you on Fox 5, and I'm very excited for all of us New Yorkers to cast our votes on Tuesday, if we haven't already, and then all of us to get some sleep on Wednesday.
That's right. We could sleep on Wednesday. Plenty of time. And the polls open at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, and they stay open until 9 o'clock at night, so there's plenty of opportunity for you. But, Trip, I really want to break it down. Let's start with Mamdani. He's the front runner. Yeah. He's the one building momentum and generating all of this interest in the race. He made the most of social media. He really used a strategy, ranked choice voting, to his advantage. So talk to us. Did he do what he needed to seal the deal today?
Absolutely. Look, the fairy tale campaign of Zohran Mamdani is only just starting. He ran, in my opinion, the best campaign in modern New York City history in the primary, having a huge upset, beating Cuomo by 13 points when he was originally polling at 1% in the polls. Incredible, turning out over 40,000 new voters, many of them young first-time voters. So in the primary, what he's done in the general in the last 4 months is just maintain his momentum. It's a little bit different now. He's not the plucky underdog at the start of the action-packed movie. This is actually the sequel where he's actually on the throne in the general election, and that everyone's gunning for him because he's ahead by so much. So he had to really maintain his lead. I thought he did an effective job. Look, what I'll say about this mayor's race in the general election is this. We just had 9 days of early vote. You have to really look at the pattern. The first 2 days of early vote, the first Saturday and Sunday, Andrew Cuomo actually was a pretty good weekend for Andrew Cuomo.
That's right. The data showed people were over the age of 50 in the first days of the early voting, but that flipped recently.
That flipped. So early vote is 9 days. If it was just the first 2 days of early vote with high turnout in areas like the Upper East Side that have been traditionally Cuomo-friendly, it might have been a good election day for Andrew Cuomo. But what happened in the remaining 7 days of early vote is that the young folks, the young New Yorkers, they turned out in droves. All you had to do is go to a poll site in places like Astoria or in Bed-Stuy or in Crown Heights or in Greenpoint, and you saw a lot of young people that overwhelmingly vote for Mamdani, and they turned out. So where does that leave us? It leaves us in a situation where voters under the age of 55, basically a demographic that is Mamdani friendly, they became the majority of the electorate in early vote. So for Andrew Cuomo to have any shot at pulling off an upset tomorrow, he's got to have a massive turnout, especially with seniors.
So let's talk about Andrew Cuomo. You know, he had some would describe a lackluster performance leading up to the primary, and he lost it and then decided to run as an independent. He really represents the establishment in the Democratic Party. How do you think he did in these final days? Because we really saw him ratchet up the energy in his campaign. In fact, he's got another, as I said, appearance tonight. He's talking to reporters. But is it too little, too late, or what do you think?
Look, I would just say this, to some of our viewers who may be going through their college exams, This is a great lesson. You study for your college exams, not the night before your final exam. You study for it throughout the semester. Because if Andrew Cuomo, who seems like he's had 3 cups of coffee every morning, if he actually brought this type of energy and intensity to the campaign trail back in June, when he was ahead by a large margin, he had the endorsement of almost every Democratic institution, he might have been in a very, very different situation, more positive for him today. He might have been measuring the drapes at City Hall. However, look, while Andrew Cuomo has increased his energy, some of it's a little bit too late. The reason why is because in New York City, the majority of all registered voters are registered Democrats. Some would say almost 70% of likely voters in New York City are Democratic voters, which means Andrew Cuomo has to win that remaining 30% by a massive margin, and he has to convince a large plurality of registered Democrats to vote for him when he's now running as a third-party independent and not the Democratic nominee. Voters have to go extra hard, work extra hard on their ballot to find someone on a third-party line, not the Democratic line.
I've seen the ballot. We're going to talk about the ballot and some ballot issues coming up. But I want to ask you, before we get to Curtis Sliwa, I want to talk about President Trump's backhanded endorsement of Cuomo, both on 60 Minutes last night and on a tweet that he just put out about an hour ago. Does that help or hurt?
Look, Andrew Cuomo, at this point, he's got to try to get as many Republicans as he can get, continue to siphon off Republican voters from the Republican nominee, Chris Sliwa. Very rare, by the way, because if you followed Andrew Cuomo's time as governor, Republicans did not like the guy.
Yeah.
But I'll say this, he has to do this play to get Trump's endorsement because he's kind of out of options. On the other hand, Donald Trump's approval rating in New York City, in this deeply Democratic town, is usually minus 50. Look, the Boston Red Sox might be more popular in New York than Donald Trump. So I don't know if it helps him. But at this point, he kind of has to throw everything at the wall, see what haymakers can actually land.
All right, let's talk about Republicans. Let's talk about Curtis Sliwa, out there again today, very consistent, always at a subway platform, says he's a real New Yorker and has really been pushing back on his rivals who say he's a spoiler and they want him out.
I'll say this, I'm a lifelong Democrat. I kind of like Curtis Sliwa. I mean, he actually, look, in all seriousness, he seems to really care about New York. Public service seems to be in his veins. As New Yorkers, we all know him, with his red beret, him and his crew patrolling the subways for decades. Curtis Sliwa ran for mayor before. I anticipate he'll run for mayor again. He really just seems like he's having a really fun time. And by the way, he's the rare kind of Republican who actually goes against Donald Trump, and he goes against the so-called economic elite in America.
Yep.
Curtis Sliwa is almost a Republican populist version of Mamdani in terms of that power to the people type of messaging, rhetoric, and approach. And the final thing I'll say about Curtis Sliwa is that if this were a one-on-one race with Cuomo versus Mamdani, Cuomo's probably got more than the puncher's chance to win. But the fact that Curtis Sliwa refused to drop out, if you're a Democrat who's going to vote for a Democratic nominee, that is good news to you.
Awesome. Trip, don't go anywhere because we got a full jam-packed hour. Before we take a break, we're going to hear some of the voters. I went to 5 boroughs in 5 days to find out what voters are concerned about, what was their top voting issues, and we're going to play a little bit of that sound for you, take a really quick break, and then we're going to bring in some other live guests for us. We're really excited, so thanks for staying with us here on Newsroom Live. And Brian, give it a shot. Play the sound.
Safety, feel safe, and economy as well, prices and everything.
Affordability, definitely affordability. Nothing is affordable. People can't live their lives, can't go out do things that they want to do.
We need a lot of help because obviously we can't always walk up and down our streets because there's so much drug use and so much happening, so much youth not having the programs to go to.
Right back on the other side of this break. And welcome back to Newsroom Live. You're looking at a live picture of New York City tonight. Tomorrow, we will know who the next mayor of New York City will be. On Election Day, polls close at 9 p.m. tomorrow night, and they open at 6 a.m. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Sharon Crowley reporting to you from the Fox 5 newsroom here on the Upper East Side. Let's get right to our political experts. I'm going to start with Ashley Koenig with Rutgers University. Ashley, thank you so much for joining us this evening. So much to get to about this New York City mayor's race. I know you're the New Jersey expert, but I'm going to ask you a little bit about New York. I wanted to know, what does this early voter turnout tell us about, why are New Yorkers, for the first time by some accounts since 1969, been so interested in participating in this election? And it appears we're poised for a record turnout tomorrow on Election Day.
Yeah, look, all of these elections that we're having on the Eastern Seaboard over here have huge implications nationally as well. And I think that's what's galvanizing voters going to the ballot box, whether earlier on Election Day, that this is being watched across the nation. And I mean, in New York City, this mayoral race is monumental. Let's not forget early voting is somewhat new in many places. And of course, that's why we're seeing increases in general. But, voters are enthusiastic and want to turn out. So I think that's why we're seeing this outpouring, whether we're talking about either race on either side of the river.
And one more question for you before I bring in some of the other guests. Let's talk about some of the issues that really rose up here. I mean, Mamdani's being compared to President Trump in 2015 and really going for populace and for affordability, the cost of living in New York. Do you think that's what really energized his campaign?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, this issue, again, is something that all of the major elections, all the races that we're going to be watching tomorrow really have in common that affordability is key. We're in the midst of a shutdown. People have been furloughed, losing jobs, have negative perceptions of the economy. It doesn't matter if we're talking about New York City or New Jersey, Virginia, or otherwise. People are acutely feeling these kitchen table issues. And so, that kind of populism that Mamdani is really stirring up, I think is quite powerful and effective for the average voter when they see in their own pocketbooks that they're hurting.
That's right. All right. Well, don't go anywhere, Ashley. We need you again. So stay right there. I'm going to bring in a different guest now. I'm going to bring in Micah Rasmussen from Ryder. Thank you so much for joining us. We so appreciate it. Micah, my question for you, because I know you study all things on both sides of the river here, are quite the expert. Want to ask you about this issue of affordability. We started a little bit on with Ashley on it, but I've heard it said that we're again kind of becoming two separate cities, those with and those without, and that the wealth gap is just so enormous. Do you think this helped drive Mamdani's popularity in this race?
Yeah, there are certainly many voters in who own homes and who have great incomes who are not bothered by the cost of groceries, who don't even really look at the cost of something. But that's not the situation for everyone. And that's certainly not the situation in the areas that Mamdani has represented in the legislature and that he's drawing strength from now. And so I do think that that's part of his message, is people who feel unheard, people who feel like they're not being heard or represented. And so I think as much as anything, affordability is almost a proxy for his newness, running against the system, running against the status quo. In that way, I do see similarities with Trump. I do see that he is running as the outsider, the change agent, and that's what people are responding to. I think affordability certainly gets wrapped up in all that, but it's almost a symptom of being unheard, a symptom of being unrepresented.
Yeah, and this race, and we've talked about this before, but it bears repeating, really has drawn national and international attention. I mean, President Trump talking about it on 60 Minutes, and I guess the only way to describe it is a backhanded endorsement of Cuomo, the lesser of two evils, right? How will that play in this race? And why do you think there is such national and international attention on this race?
Yeah, I think it will certainly, Trump's endorsement will not help Cuomo tomorrow. Look, Trump's approval rating in the city is something like negative 80%, right? You know, it's really low. It's deeply underwater, and I think that President Trump knew that. I think President Trump, as others have pointed out, is looking for a foil. He's looking to make him the new face of the Democratic Party. He is itching to have this guy to run against. He likes an opponent, and it's not really running against; it's having somebody to be his foil. And so I think he sees the writing on the wall. He sees that this is a runaway race. He doesn't see himself stopping. He knows that Cuomo is not catching fire at this point. I mean, I guess there's one late breaking poll that suggests Atlas suggests that it's closing, but the entirety of the rest of the polling suggests that this is a settled matter tomorrow. And, we'll see what happens. Obviously, the voters are going to have their say. But I think Trump is looking for somebody to be his new opponent going forward. And he's itching to have this guy be the one.
All right, Micah, don't go anywhere. I have more questions for you. I'm going to bring in Chris Hahn, though, a Democratic strategist right now who knows all things New York. This is his wheelhouse. Chris, thank you so much for being with me tonight on our streaming show. I so appreciate it. I want to ask you, I'm going to pick up on the part of the conversation there that we just had. Is this a contest between the establishment Democrat and the progressive Democrat? Is that why it's drawing so much interest nationally?
Well, look, I think that was the contest that we had back in June. I think what we have right now is a really insurgent candidate in Mondami versus Cuomo trying to hold on, and some people who may be afraid to turn the city over to somebody so young and so inexperienced, and of course, who has that democratic socialist label. In the financial capital of the world, you're going to have a democratic socialist mayor, more than likely starting January 1. So yeah, there is this battle in this party right now between the old and the new. And Mondami is definitely part of the new, along with people like AOC and believe it or not, Bernie Sanders, who's 82, right? So we have this situation right here in New York City where Mondami looked like a runaway train. He might be a runaway train. I'm thinking it's going to be closer than people actually think, looking at the early voting numbers and the demographics of it. They are skewing a lot older. I don't know that the Mondami campaign did such a good job getting early voters out as they did in the primary. So we're going to see. I think Mondami wins, but I don't think it's a 10-point margin. I think it's more like a 4-point margin.
So I want to ask you actually about Cuomo now and a little bit about Curtis Lewa. Cuomo really, he lost in the primary, then decides to run as an independent, but his campaign only seemed to catch fire really in the last couple of days. Can he do anything? Do you think he did anything to close the gap?
Yeah. I mean, I think that his attack ads have been good. The problem for him is Sliwa, right? Sliwa did better than expected. Sliwa was my old radio partner at WABC in New York, as many of you may know. And he's a smart guy, even though he doesn't always appear so. And I think he ran a pretty effective campaign among Republicans, which is why, Donald Trump comes out today and says, hey, Republicans, don't vote for this guy. But I agree with what Micah just said. Trump wants Mondami. He needs a bogeyman that he could call and attack and that could be in all the ads in the midterms. But I got to tell you something. It doesn't work. And I agree with the comparison between Mondami and Trump. They had a populist campaign based on affordability. And God, New York City, I do really well. New York City is a tough place to live, right? It is a tough place to live for anybody who's not doing really, really well, for sure. So Mondami is seizing on that affordability issue in the same way Trump did. Now he's got to deliver. We look at Trump's polling numbers right now. They are diving because Trump is not delivering on the affordability question. Mondami will face the same problem very quickly if he doesn't deliver.
That's right. And as we know, as you know, the mayor of New York City doesn't have the authority over the buses. That's something that he needs to work with the governor on, with Albany on. And that goes the same for raising the taxes on the rich. That's another promise he had. And there's no evidence that Kathy Hochul, who's up for re-election in 2026, would want to raise taxes if she also wants to be reelected and facing stiff competition from maybe somebody like Elise Stefanik or others in this race.
Yeah, I would not believe that Governor Hochul is going to raise taxes in an election year. And Mondami was a member of the assembly where he could have voted on some of these things already and did not in his brief career in the New York State Assembly. But I do think he could find ways to make it more affordable for people to take the bus, maybe provide a subsidy from the city of New York or things like that. If he starts delivering on some of these promises, and if he finds a way to make New York City more affordable, it'll be tougher to attack him. He's got to do a lot of reaching out. There are some groups that are very much afraid of him. I've talked to a lot of Jewish voters in the city of New York who are terrified of him. And I think he's got a big job to do between Election Day and Inauguration Day to ease that fear. I think, keeping Jessica Tisch and making sure she stays will go a long way to do that. But I think he's got a lot of work to do in the Jewish community and other communities that are fearful of a Mondami mayoralship.
And Mamdani, of course, knows multiple languages. He was born in Uganda. I mean, do you think that's part of the reason that the whole world is watching what happens in New York City, or do they all watch what happens in New York City anyway?
We're the capital of the world. You know that.
Yeah,
I
know
are
that.
The capital of the world. The greatest city in the world. And what happens in New York goes global almost all the time. And look, we got this young, hip guy, right? When Adams was still in the race and Cuomo was in the race and Sliwa, the three of those guys looked like three old fogies, and there's this young, hip guy running against them. New beats old almost all the time. Take a puppy and an old dog. You're going to go pet the puppy first. And that's what's going on here. He's hip. He's got new ideas. He's fresh. And I think that's a big part of it. And I think Cuomo, the last couple of weeks, has run some pretty good ads, or at least the super PACs backing him have run some really good ads against him. And I think if they would have done some of that in the primary instead of thinking it was going to be a coronation, we might be having a different conversation tonight talking about the Cuomo mayorship coming up.
All right, lastly, before I let you go, and don't go anywhere because we have a whole nother half hour to get through and we have so much more to talk about. But and I want to talk about the New Jersey governor's race next. So much to talk about there. But I want to ask you, since you worked with him, why did Sliwa stay in this race when he appeared to maintain his status as a distant third?
My favorite line from Pulp Fiction, I cannot say on this air, okay? But
Okay.
let's just say that's just pride leaping with you. Okay.
All right.
And I think, look, Curtis is a proud man. He's a guy who fights hard. He's been a New York institution as long as I can remember. And he ran a good, hard campaign. 4 years ago, he got 28.5% of the vote against Adams. If it had been a true four-way race, that 28.5%, if it held, might have got him elected. So there is there's some of that. And Curtis made the point, earlier last week, that he's out there working hard and he hasn't seen some of these other candidates out there. Why aren't they calling on Cuomo to drop out and everybody support him?
That's right.
So there's part of that too. So I don't think, look, if Curtis gets above like 17%, Cuomo can't win. If Curtis does 28.5%, people are going to be saying, why didn't Cuomo drop out? But I don't think that's possible. I think Cuomo's going to do a strong second. I think it's going to be closer than people think.
All right, Chris, don't go anywhere. Keep it right here. When we come back, we're going to talk about President and former president weighing in on New Jersey's governor's race. We'll have the very latest from there coming right up because that's at stake tomorrow, too. Keep it right here. We'll be back in 2 minutes. You are looking at a live picture of Republican gubernatorial candidate Jack Ciattarelli in New Jersey. He wants to be New Jersey's next governor in a state that traditionally votes blue, a blue state, but he's hoping to make it purple or red, at least when it comes to the governor's office. So he's campaigning there this evening around the clock, really hoping to close the gap between him and Mikey Sherrill. Mikey Sherrill this weekend, the Democrat running to be New Jersey's governor, got some pretty powerful support from former President Barack Obama. He showed up at a rally for her, and actually both there he is. That's from over the weekend. He lended his support to Mikey Sherrill, trying to convince New Jersey voters, because the polls have had this, some of them in a dead heat. Ciattarelli has really made some ground. And tonight at Ciattarelli's rally, as if we take another live look at that, we understand President Trump was calling in to be part via telephone to be part of that rally as well, really throwing some heavy weights behind these campaigns. So a lot of eyes on New Jersey and also Virginia. I'm going to bring in the experts once again. Joining me, Ashley, we're going to start with you from Rutgers, Ashley Koenig from Rutgers University. Thank you for being here and sticking it out with us. So talk to me about New Jersey's governor's race getting so much attention. What is it telling us, the outcome of this race? What will it tell the party and the two parties as we get to the midterms?
Yeah, I think we're really finally earning that bellwether moniker that we often get in these gubernatorial years for New Jersey, simply because New Jersey has, one of the highest immigrant populations, one of the most diverse populations in the country, and really acts as a microcosm for the country as a whole. And so I think a lot of these lessons that we see play out through Election Day in New Jersey could potentially be applied on the 2026 battlefield here for both parties. Both of these candidates, Ciattarelli and Sherrill, have been both trying to play their party base, but also moderate at the same time to get those unaffiliateds and those undecideds. And so I think that will tell each of the national parties a lot about the kind of playbooks that they will need going into 2026, especially when it comes to what kind of messaging on affordability works, and especially when it comes to particular demographics. First and foremost, looking at the Hispanic Latino vote, looking at non-college educated, looking at suburban voters. I think a lot coming out of this race will really inform those 2026 roadmaps.
I feel like the main issue in New Jersey for New Jersey residents is property taxes and just the complicated, complex formula used that every town has a different property tax rate. And of course, Jack Ciattarelli, ran on saying that he would try to lower those property taxes. But of course, he's in charge of the sales tax, not the property tax in New Jersey. And he would need to get along with the Democratic-controlled legislature there. So those are a lot of challenges like we were talking about here in New York City. There's a lot of promises, but in order to deliver on those promises, it's a little more complicated than maybe voters know.
Yeah, and I think that's why maybe at the federal level we are described as this blue state, because we've been voting blue for president since the Bill Clinton years in terms of recent history. But this is why we're really a much more purple state when it comes to the governor's office. I mean, we've had Republican governors as recently as Chris Christie and Christine Todd Whitman. And so, New Jersey voters, much like the rest of the country, have these ideological mood swings and go back and forth seeing who could solve the unsolvable problem of property taxes that is voted the #1 problem in the state by New Jerseyans for many of the decades in which we've been polling. Right alongside that, we also see New Jerseyans continually complain to us and be concerned about in our polling, looking at cost of living and affordability. They think the state government is handling taxes and cost of living incredibly poorly. They're the two worst rated issues for the New Jersey state government. And everything we hear is about that affordability umbrella term under which all of these other kitchen table issues fall.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And you would think that if the property taxes have been high through, 2 terms of Phil Murphy, that maybe voters would be looking for a change. And maybe that explains why the race is as close as it is. I'm going to bring in Micah Rasmussen now to talk with us a little bit more about New Jersey and where you think things fall tonight. Could this be a close race tomorrow, do you think?
It could certainly be close. As you have said, there's sort of a bifurcation in the polling. There is a lot of polling that suggests that it's maybe in the 3 to 5 to 7 point range. And then you've got some polling that shows that it's in the 1 or 2 point range. I think we definitely could see any of those options. There is a sense that maybe the Cheryl campaign is opening up a little bit at the end, opening up a lead a little bit at the end. We really don't know. I think any of those are possible. But I don't think that anybody counts Jack Ciattarelli out. I don't think anybody says that he doesn't have a good shot going into tomorrow. I pay a lot of attention. I don't know if you want to ask about it later, but I'm going to step on it if you do. The early voting. And,
yes. I want to
think
hear
that
about it. How did New Jerseyans? We've been talking a lot about New York City. How's the early voting in New Jersey going?
Well, it's interesting. We have about the same population statewide that New York City does. We also have the same number of early votes, about 740,000 total early votes, another almost 600,000 in the mailbox. So it's been a heavy, heavy year for early voting. 1.3 million, it may be as much as half of the election came in already. People have already voted. And in that half of the election, I'm thinking about it in halves, there are 300,000 more Democrats that have voted than Republicans. I think that that is a nice cushion for Mikey Sherrill. The only cushion that's been larger going into Election Day was last year in the presidential race. Usually it's smaller than that. In 2021, the last governor's race, it was smaller than that. So I think they feel like they're cooking. Now, on the other side, we've got the second half of the election tomorrow.
That's
Ciattarelli
right.
will almost certainly get more Election Day voters themselves to vote for him. He'll be some lead. The question is, can he do as well? Can he build an electorate that's 300,000 Republican larger tomorrow? And the challenge there, of course, is that we don't have as many Republicans in the state. So he's got to get a combination of Republicans and unaffiliated voters and maybe even some Democrats voting for him.
And in New Jersey, the unaffiliated voters are the largest voting bloc, right?
They are, but they're less interested and motivated in this race than they were in the presidential race last year. They're slower to get active and to get involved. There's a little bit of a surge in their participation now at the end. They've waited to decide, they've waited to activate, and we'll see how many of them actually do. But there's a lower level in the early vote. There's a much lower level of participation from unaffiliated than, let's say, the presidential race.
Awesome. Mike, keep it right here. Thank you so much for updating us on New Jersey. And when we come right back, we're going to once again bring you back to the New York City mayoral race, the very latest for the fight for City Hall. I'm Sharon Crowley. Keep it right here. We'll be right back. All right, we're taking you live to the campaign trail tonight. That is Republican gubernatorial candidate Jack Ciattarelli taking some selfies there. I promise you we'll go right back to the New York City mayor's race, but political strategist Chris Hahn needs to weigh in on the New Jersey governor's race too. Chris, what do you got there? What do you think? I mean, it's going to be close.
Jersey. If Trump thought Chitterelli was going to win in New Jersey, there'd be a rally at Bedminster tonight. There isn't. He did a conference call. Trump is the kind of guy that doesn't want to be seen with losers. I think Chitterelli ran a great campaign, an absolute great campaign. And if Harris had won, he'd be getting ready to become governor of the state of New York, state of New Jersey. Unfortunately for him, Trump won, and Trump is not that popular in New Jersey. I don't think he could outperform Trump's popularity. I think Mikey Sherrill is going to win very easily. I'm watching Passaic County. I want to see if those Latino voters collapse for Republicans or if they stick with them. If they stick with them, he has a chance, but I don't think they're gonna.
All right, Chris, keep it right there. Don't go anywhere. I promised our viewers that we're going to talk a little bit more about the New York City mayor's race. First, let's hear from some New York City voters. I went to 5 boroughs in 5 days to find out what voters care about. And Brian Kay, our operator here, is going to play some of that down for you.
I think top of the list is affordable housing. Yeah.
How come?
Well, because the city is becoming increasingly accessible only to people who have good incomes.
They will have to realize that whenever they ride in the bus or in the train, they will have to pay the fare.
And you want the next mayor to make sure that happens?
Yeah. Please, yeah.
It's not safe. Literally, it's not safe. You can stay in here, there could be some individual who just might want to be a nut and take somebody's life. So they don't put the people where they belong. And somebody has to step forward and do it.
Safety, that's very big issue because there's a lot of crime. That's very frightening. So I would say mostly safety for me.
That's the number one.
Yeah, for me, yes.
I was at the Staten Island ferry there talking to folks. Safety was not just a Staten Island issue. All 5 boroughs, that was number 1 or number 2, and obviously cost of living also up there. I don't know if it's perception of crime. Every time we talk to the NYPD or the mayor's office, they tell us the stats are down, and yet New Yorkers don't feel safe. They see homelessness on the subway. They see, random crimes that end up as a headline in our news, strange things that happen sometimes on the MTA. And, I was surprised. Every single borough, voters that I stopped on the street and talked to of all ages and all demographics telling me that crime was still a pretty strong issue. What do you make of that? And do you think any of the candidates running for mayor talked about that effectively?
So what I'll say about crime is that the statistics matter, but it also matters to voters emotionally, psychologically, beyond the stats. The reason why is this. During COVID, yes, crime did go up. During the economic anxiety, the health pandemic, that crisis that we all went through a couple years ago.
Yep.
In the past couple years, if you look here in New York City, crime has actually gone down. That's quality of life crime, that's violent crime such as shootings as well as murders. It has actually gone down. I do credit the police commissioner, Jessica Tisch, for restoring the public's confidence in law enforcement.
Yeah, she got rid of a bunch of corrupt police officers, actually.
As well as that, right? Crime as well as rooting out corruption. That's why so many have asked for, if Mamdani does become the mayor, to keep Police Commissioner Tisch on. But look, beyond that, you also have to realize that here in New York City, crime is emotional as well. If a crime happened to you or a loved one, it means much, much more than a statistic. We have to make sure that as a city, everyone feels safe. They're not just safe, they feel safe as well on the subway, commuting, walking to and from the park, their office, etc. So I'll say this to wrap this up, is that different candidates talked about crime in different ways. Sliwa talked about his decades of service in terms of the patrolling the subways.
That's right, as a guardian angel, founder of the Guardian Angels.
Right, you're right. Not quite NYPD officer as a guardian angel. Cuomo talked about hiring more police officers. Mamdani actually talked about establishing a Department of Community Safety, making sure that officers are supported in the sense that you don't want a police officer to always respond to a 911 mental health call. He critically apologized recently on Fox News to rank and file NYPD officers for some of his past comments.
There's some that want to leave the department if he should win. There's still
so he's actually he's moderated. So I'll say this. The candidates did what they needed to do on this issue. I don't think that the way candidates talk about crime is going to be who decides who wins. It's going to be more about a turnout. Where do you take your base of voters, how well you activate them, and crucially, how well you talk about affordability, the cost of living. That's what's going to determine who's going to win on Tuesday.
All right, let's bring in our other analysts here. It's going to be a party tonight. We're going to bring in Ashley, Micah, and Chris. Thank you so much, guys. And I know you loved hearing what Tripp had to say. Let's talk about the issues in this race driving New York City voters. I mean, I interviewed Hank Scheinkopf earlier today, and he was the one that quoted me, since we haven't had this kind of a turnout in early voting since 1969. I don't know if he was just talking off the cuff or what, but what do you think is why are New Yorkers so eager to cast their ballots when other election cycles it's been very lackluster? And I guess I'm going to start with you, Ashley.
Oh, wow, I'm lucky. I think it's a lot of the reasons that we've been saying, where all eyes are on these kinds of races. We have a new invigorating candidate. I mean, again, this harkens back to populist movements, and age is not a factor here when we mention somebody like Bernie Sanders. We could look at kind of the galvanizing, compelling qualities of Obama. I mean, this is a really different race with Mamdani in it. And I think that's why it's become, of course, dissatisfaction with Adams as well. Great dissatisfaction among New Yorkers. I think this is why that they are so impassioned to go to the polls. I think it's the spirit and the context, the national political landscape, and the candidates who are at play right now in this race.
And Mike, I'll let you pick it up from there. Definitely, I've been saying over and over again, this is a race being viewed both nationally and internationally as a bellwether for what could happen in the midterms. What are the issues that are really getting so many voters, and not just regular voters, registered voters, but new voters, younger voters out to the polls?
That's right. And we saw that this weekend. The young voter participation went way up. The number of first-time voters participating in early voting has also gone up. And I have to say a couple of things. And one, I apologize to your earlier interview, but New York only has had early voting since 2019. So it can't go back that far. I understand questions about enthusiasm and whether or not this is, there's a surge in enthusiasm compared to back then. But
thank you. I'm going to tell Hank that.
It's totally fine. The only reason I mention it, I don't mean to be, picky, is that it takes a while for voters to get used to a new mode of voting. And what we've seen in New Jersey, we were 2 years behind. We didn't introduce until 2021. It only caught fire last year in the presidential race. So it takes a while. And I think what you're seeing is the same thing, is that voters are finding it's really convenient. It's a great way to vote. You don't have to wait in the lines on Election Day. And importantly, when voters have choices, when they have stark choices, real differences, that's when they're going to come out and respond to that. And I think that's what they have unquestionably in this race.
So, Chris, I want to ask you a slightly different question. As we watch the returns come in tomorrow, let's look ahead a little bit. What will you be looking to see in terms of guessing who the next mayor of New York City will be? Which boroughs will you be looking at voter turnout in, and what will you be able to figure out from that?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to see the early vote number. Once they start popping up, I want to see if Mamdani has a lead in the early vote, right? Yes. Younger voters started coming out over the weekend, but the first, 8 days of early voting was not good, I think, for him. So I want to check that number and see what the margin is there. Second, I want to see the numbers in Brooklyn and Queens, because I think that's going to be his strong point, right? And early voting numbers, even though they were older, they were more in Brooklyn and Queens than basically anywhere else.
They were. Big number in Brooklyn and Manhattan.
There was a lot of support there. So, I want to see that. I mean, that's really where you got to look. I mean, I think that we're going to have an answer at the end of the night. I don't think this is going to go into overtime. I think the same thing in New Jersey and in Virginia. But I do want to see where those numbers are come from. And look, the turnout question, it's very simple. You have a competitive race here. And you have a competitive race for a couple of reasons, right? You have a former governor who's done a lot of good things. I mean, he left under circumstances that were less than good, but he's done a lot of good things when he was governor. You have an upstart who's got a lot of energy, and people really like what they see in him. And, with the New York City financing of these candidates, you have well-funded campaigns. Even Curtis Sliwa's campaign is well-funded. And so there's a lot of attention on this race, bringing a lot of turnout. I think it's good for New York. And I think it's going to be good for New York going forward that you have competitive races. And I think that's what the campaign financing law the public financing of elections in New York City has actually done for the city.
Yeah, it's been an amazing race, really so unusual. Listen, don't go anywhere. Keep it right here. We're taking one final break, and when we come back, we're going to wrap up the races and, cross our fingers and stay up all night till 6 a.m., right?
Hopefully.
We'll be right back.
They need to improve the Bronx by getting off all them homeless people you see around there by the train station and up there, try to put them somewhere like in a home or a facility and make sure that at least they try to get like at least a meal a day. I feel like that can help.
What issues most concern you about the Bronx that you'd like to see fixed?
The homeless. The homeless.
I think they should put more NYPD on everywhere in the Bronx.
How come?
It's dangerous out here, especially for old people, especially around here. It's dangerous at any time of the day. It could be in the morning or at night. But I think NYPD, more NYPD.
I live here. Oh my God, it's so bad.
Too many drugs.
Yeah, and the younger people. I feel so guilty about them.
I think the bus service needs a little bit of help. I think right now you have a lot of people that pay their fare, and then there are a lot of riders that just hop on the bus, so it's a little bit frustrating.
Take all the police officers that's not working off our streets, because all they're doing is babysitting the streets. They're not doing anything.
All right, I was up in the Bronx just a few weeks ago. Those are some of voters' concerns there, pretty consistent. They're concerned about homelessness and crime and all of that. So let's look ahead to tomorrow, whoever the outcome, whoever the winner is, if it's Mamdani or someone else. Trump has vowed, if it is Mamdani, that he's going to cut off federal funding. How big of a concern do you think that is for New Yorkers, and will that have any impact, do you think, on the race?
So absolutely, the threat of Donald Trump and his actions so far towards a number of Democratic-led cities across our country, Chicago, D.C., Portland, threatening to reduce federal funding, sending a National Guard to these cities, it is a major factor and a major challenge to the next mayor of New York, which is likely Zohran Mamdani. What I will say this is that the relationship between a mayor and a governor here in New York has always been important. It will be even ever more important if Mamdani is the mayor and Donald Trump follows through on his word, including raising revenue, for example, which is a priority that Mamdani has, working with Albany, the governor, the state legislature, to enact some of his goals, and quite frankly, also coordinating with a number of state offices, the governor's office, the state attorney general's office, in terms of filing lawsuits against the Trump administration. So both from a governmental aspect as well as a legal aspect, it's going to be critically important for a potential Mayor Mamdani to coordinate with state leaders.
All right, Tripp, keep it there. Don't go anywhere. Let's bring in our other guests. I'm going to bring them in now, and we're going to reverse the order. Chris Hahn, talk to me about what you're looking for tomorrow as it relates to the New York City mayor's race outcome.
Look, I am looking for a clear winner, and I am looking to see it by about 11 p.m., maybe less. Before your 10 p.m. broadcast is over,
that's right,
you will be announcing the winner, Sharon.
All
so
right.
We'll see what happens there. But look, as for Trump, he could try to withhold funds from New York. If he ever wants to come back to this city in any way, shape, or form, he might want to rethink that. And I also think that the next Speaker of the House is going to be from one of the outer boroughs, just like Trump was. He might want to think twice before messing with the congressional appropriations for this city, because it's going to be met with a lot of resistance, not just from Democrats, but also from a lot of Republicans who have businesses in this city.
Mike, I see you nodding your head. You want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, the city is more than just a city. It's a region. And, look, it involves New Jersey. We see that with the Gateway Tunnel. I mean, that project has been frozen at this point. And I think New Jersey was looking for Jack Ciattarelli to say to the White House, what are you doing here? He didn't do that. But the city's success or failure is something that affects all of us. And so we all want it to do well. And if it doesn't do well because the federal government has disinvested, then that's something that's going to be held against the party in power. And so we'll see what happens. But hopefully cooler heads prevail here, because we've got big projects and big priorities that have to advance, or we have a 100-year-old rail tunnel that we continue to rely on, things like that. So, I think we're looking for pragmatic winners tomorrow, winners that decide that they want to advance real needs, real priorities. And I think we'll get that because that's how you get reelected. That's how you stick around.
And Ashley, what if Mikey Sherrill wins, a Democrat, as governor of New Jersey, and Mamdani, Democrat, wins? Does that mean both states are in trouble in terms of getting federal funding for that Gateway Tunnel project and others?
Yeah, that has so many questions and implications coming from it. I think, number one, what does that mean for federal funding? And is there going to be a complete shutout of part of the tri-state area? I think, number two, what does that mean for how the Democratic Party proceeds when they have a moderate Democrat who wins in one state, but then they have someone on the complete opposite end of the Democratic spectrum winning within New York City? What does that mean in terms of the midterms for how both of these parties go forward? If there is too much being enacted or being taken away from New Jersey and New York City, is that going to backfire on the Trump administration and Republicans, where this can be fuel used by Democrats in the midterm? So I think there's a lot of complications, and there's a lot to answer after Election Day, dependent upon who wins.
All right, Ashley, Chris, Micah, thank you so much. We're going to let you guys go. We look forward to tomorrow night. I'll be checking in with you. It's really going to be exciting. Tripp, thank you for being with me this evening on this election eve, where I think the candidates might be campaigning all night. We're looking up on our screens, and we saw a couple of appearances. They're going to keep going right through, right? You've worked on campaigns before. We usually see them out there on the subway first thing in the morning, as voters are going to the polls.
Yeah, absolutely. I've worked on too many campaigns, over 50 of them professionally in this town. Look, polls are open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Yep.
Right now, over 700,000 New Yorkers have early voted.
Yep.
I believe you could get close to 2 million votes.
All right, that's
in
your
this general
prediction.
election.
All right, Tripp, thank you so much for being with us. I'm Sharon Crowley. Thank you so much for joining us on this election eve. And tomorrow night at this time, we could be close to...
Thanks for watching Fox 5 New York. We're now joining live now from Fox.